The LinkedIn Podcast Network is sponsored by TIAA. TIAA makes you a retirement promise, a promise of a guaranteed retirement paycheck for life. Learn more at TIAA.org/promises pay off.
LinkedIn presents.
The world we live in today isn't the same one our grandfathers, uncles, and even many of our fathers lived in. We live in a time when skills such as empathy, collaboration, good communication are all necessary to succeed in schools and increasingly the workplace. This is the new toolkit we all need to thrive and survive. For boys to become competent men today, the old way of doing things no longer helps them thrive or survive.
It's Thursday. I'm Michael Kovnat. This is the Next Big Idea Daily. Big ideas from big thinkers in under 15 minutes. To stay even more informed and inspired, sign up for our newsletter using the link in the episode notes. And if you're not already subscribed to the show, make sure you hit the follow button in your podcast player. Now, are you a man? Do you know any men? I'm guessing you do, and I'm also guessing your idea of what a man is has been highly shaped by cultural narratives. Well, it turns out that some of those myths of manhood that many of us grew up with are not serving us well in modern life. And you can see that all around us. From loneliness, depression, and addiction to unemployment and violence, a lot seems wrong with men these days. Here with some analysis of what's going on and what we can do about it is Andrew Reiner, author of the book Better Boys, Better Men, the new masculinity that creates greater courage and emotional resiliency. Andrew is a professor at Towson University, a speaker and an author who's written on masculinity for the New York Times and other publications. Here's Andrew to share some of his big ideas.
Boys and men are enmeshed in global epidemics of despair, loneliness, depression, and suicide, which ultimately affects us all. All of these problems can be remedied if boys and men learn greater emotional resiliency. Paul was a good example of this. The middle-aged lawyer was like many men who become divorced. He drank too much, he tried to tough it out, and he shared only a few carefully curated struggles with guy friends. But he never shared his deeper emotional struggles. And as it does for all of us, this took a dangerous toll on him. One night, when he was drunk, desperately sad and lonely, he couldn't take it anymore. Paul needed touch from another human like never before. But there was no one in his life that he felt safe doing this with. So he hugged a vertical wooden beam in his apartment. That's right, he hugged a beam. It was so pathetic, he told me, yet so necessary. That was the beginning of his healing. After this night, Paul sought out a therapist and started having lunch with a new work friend. Through their conversations, he learned to talk about the things that mattered most, his deeper emotional life. And he found a group of friends that he meets for trivia night at a local pub. It was hard making these first steps, as it is for most men, but he has started a hero's journey that has literally saved his life, a journey that has made him far more resilient. Raising boys into competent men has nothing to do with everything we thought this required. The world we live in today isn't the same one our grandfathers, uncles, and even many of our fathers lived in. We live in a time when skills such as empathy, collaboration, good communication are all necessary to succeed in schools and increasingly the workplace. This is the new toolkit we all need to thrive and survive. For boys to become competent men today, the old way of doing things no longer helps them thrive or survive. But we aren't teaching it to them, and at devastating cost to themselves and to the rest of us. Throughout my research, I was faced with this question from the boys and men I interviewed. Doesn't leaning into emotional intelligence, especially emotional authenticity, make boys and men weak? Nope, just the opposite. As Nico, a 7th grader who took part in a weekly boys group at school where boys learn a new masculine script, told me, when I discuss and explore my deeper feelings in this group, I feel happier, less stressed, stronger. Now, who wouldn't want this? Taylor learned this, and it saved his life. The college student was like many boys I interviewed. His father had a very common old-school approach and raised Taylor to swallow back his sadness and despair and to handle problems all by himself, alone. When Taylor was bullied by his cross-country teammates at school, he internalized all of it and became deeply depressed and eventually suicidal. In other words, the way we teach so many boys to become men was literally killing him. Luckily, a school classmate befriended Taylor and taught him something that changed his life. Every weekend, a bunch of boys met in this new friend's basement and passed around a TV remote control. They pretended it was a microphone. They talked about the difficulties and struggles in their lives. More importantly, they shared the feelings beneath these struggles. And from there, Taylor sought out male mentors who taught him to meet his depression head-on. He became happier, more confident, and more resilient. He could now look people in the eye, and he pulled down better grades. I know all of this because I witnessed the transformation in Taylor firsthand as his professor, from his freshman to his junior years. This is the kind of new masculinity boys and men sorely need. What we say and don't say to boys teach them to think of themselves as non-emotional beings. It teaches them to distrust and fear their deeper emotional lives. More and more research is now showing the importance of talking to children with emotionally intelligent language beginning in infancy. This helps their brains develop analytically and has lasting impact on their success in school. But the way we talk or don't talk to boys has more serious consequences on another part of their beings that matters even more. One day a few years back, a college student in the Changing Face of Masculinity course I teach shared a short YouTube video of a toddler getting his first vaccination. It was filmed on his father's smartphone. Off camera, you can hear the boy's father trying to support and bolster his little boy in this traumatizing experience. Throughout the short video, the father charges his son over and over to say these 3 words, "I'm a man." At the end of the video, after the vaccination, the camera zooms in on the little boy. He's clearly scared, seemingly confused, and definitely in pain. Off camera, the father implores over and over, louder and louder, "Say I'm a man! I'm a man!" After a few seconds, through tears and clenched teeth, the boy pounds his chest. He hisses, "I'm a man!" Nothing captures, in such perfect, startling accuracy, the beginnings of a masculinity at war with itself. Now, this was a loving, well-meaning father trying to support his son the best way he knew how. But that's not what serves our boys anymore. We now know this from the burgeoning body of research. Talking to boys in ways that deny their very real emotional experiences teaches them to separate themselves from their own feelings, including the important negative ones. So many of the men I interviewed for my book were the products of this sort of upbringing. Men like George, who spent much of his adult life in and out of prison. Boys who are denied the language that teaches them the full range of their humanity grow into men who cannot access, process, or articulate essential parts of their being. It creates men who struggle at jobs, at marriages, as fathers, and as citizens because they've been taught to swallow back the entirety of their humanity. It creates men like George who are destructive to themselves and to the rest of us. The ballsy truth. Contrary to what many people believe about the biology of being male, men are not from Mars and women are not from Venus. The male and female brains, as we've come to think of them, are actually a myth. Even testosterone plays a far different role in determining masculine identity than we thought. A great example of how our brains don't define us is Chris. An ex-Army infantryman, Chris speaks his mind and does not suffer wimps gladly. He saw combat in Iraq and still boasts of himself as Army tough. If there was ever such a thing as a guy with a stereotypically male brain, it's Chris. When he was discharged from the military, Chris weighed many different career paths. He still harbored a boyhood dream of becoming a doctor, of being the guy who saved people and made big bucks and had a lot of status. But he didn't pursue that path. He became something he had never considered before: a hospital nurse. It wasn't easy. He faced endless belittling bards from his ex-Army buddies. He even struggled coming to terms with this career identity that seemed so stereotypically feminine within himself. He still chafes with having to clean patients' bedpans and changing their TV channels unless they're aged. He considers many of his patients too soft. And yet, he's slowly learning to embrace, even feel pride in, the softer side of his job. He told me, nurses are there for patients and their families much more than doctors are. We're the ones in the trenches providing the day-to-day care. Although he would never admit this, Chris is an example of what more and more neuro researchers say is the true nature of the human brain. 98% of our brains are a mosaic of both the masculine and the feminine. There were two things I heard over and over in the conversations I had with older boys and men of all ages. One of them was this. When they needed someone to confide in, many older boys and men said that they turned to guy friends for support. But what I soon discovered was that they really sought advice and solutions from guy friends. And when they sought this, they often did it through shared activities like video gaming or playing poker or watching sports over a beer. The truth was, though, that this brand of side-by-side advice seeking was a convenient buffer between guys and real emotional honesty. What was just as revealing, they didn't really turn to close guy friends for emotional support. For that, they turned to female friends, girlfriends, wives, and partners. What few people realize is that the way boys and men are taught to form friendships with each other is the root of this problem. It creates a subtle but inherent distrust among guys of all ages. It prevents them from feeling safe asking their guy friends for emotional support. And that's the second thing I heard over and over. If they could get emotional support from their guy friends, a lot of boys and men would welcome it. And man, do boys and men need it more now than ever. It would throw a wrench in the global epidemics of despair, loneliness, depression, and suicide. This was the reason why Dwayne, a middle-aged father of a young boy, started a father's group that meets once a month. He wanted to relearn how to trust guys again, so that he could model the kind of healthy male relationships he never had with his father, his brother, and most of the guy friends he grew up with. Confiding in men is a big change for Dwayne, because he spent much of his adult life confiding in women. When his first marriage grew rocky, he talked about his marriage with another woman, which led to emotional intimacy with her, and in turn led to divorce with his first wife. For the first time in his life, Dwayne now has a group of guy friends he can talk with, really talk with. Sure, a lot of the guys still want to talk about sports when they're out having a beer, but there are a few guys in the group that Dwayne can talk with about his depression and about the challenges of being a dad and a husband for the second time. Having this has been liberating and empowering for him. More than anything, he told me, it's healing. I'm learning how to trust other guys again, and that's important for my son to learn too.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, everyone, you can get yourself a copy of Better Boys, Better Men at your favorite bookstore. And if you like today's show, how about giving us a rating or review in your podcast player to help others find it? And remember, if you want to have big ideas like these right in your pocket, head over to the App Store and download our next Big Idea app. I'm Michael Kovnat. See you tomorrow.